Neither time nor distance can erase Red Dead Redemption 2 from our minds.
Don't you like me no more?
Because what Rockstar achieved with this title goes far beyond the traditional development of video games. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a masterpiece that redefines storytelling and immersion in gaming. Rockstar didn't just create an open world, it crafted a legend where every detail, every landscape, and every character tells a story worthy of being remembered forever.
My way home.
You are a good man, Arthur Morgan.
The overwhelming success of GTA 5 gave Rockstar the financial stability it needed to build a world with unprecedented depth. And even though its online mode failed and was later abandoned by the developers, the game remains years later a benchmark in the industry. Because a masterpiece remains a masterpiece even when the lights go out and the museum is empty. Today I bring you a top 30 list of the most realistic details in Red Dead Redemption 2 with surprises you may have never noticed because you played too fast, or things that hopefully no mentally stable person would ever attempt, like staring too long into the eyes of the camp girls. Police behavior in Red Dead Redemption 2 reached an unprecedented level of realism.
Hey, dude.
In previous Rockstar games, even the smallest crime would trigger an exaggerated response, almost always resulting in you being absurdly arrested or shot. With this installment, for the first time, we were given the option to calm an officer down and apologize,
Get on out of here, you.
thus avoiding arrest if the offense wasn't too serious. This leads to one of the most elaborate wanted systems ever seen in a video game. When a witness reports you, they run to the nearest sheriff's office. That's when the wanted level is triggered. However, if your offense isn't too severe, the officer might simply scold you and ask you to leave, meaning that if you stay calm, you can walk away from trouble without further consequences. This system also opens the door to new minor offenses that in the past would have been tedious for players. A clear example is that now you can trigger a wanted level simply by insisting on entering a locked property. If you try to open a blocked door or even attempt to break it down, whether the building has an interior or not, any nearby witness might consider it suspicious activity and report you. However, instead of launching an immediate chase, the responding officer will act with the appropriate proportionality. They'll ask you to stop and invite you to leave the area. There's also another equally absurd way to get a wanted level without doing absolutely anything. You just have to go to the wealthy neighborhood of St. Denis and stare at one of its luxurious houses for too long. That alone will be considered suspicious activity, which will prompt the police to approach and investigate what you're doing, most likely kicking you out of the area. And if, like me, your brain short circuits and you accidentally pull out your weapon at the worst possible time, well, that is no longer the game's fault but your own lack of coordination. Looks like I'm safe now. People here seem normal.
Hey, mister.
Rockstar doesn't owe us anything. They didn't promise us anything. They're just an innocent company.
Well, no, they're not. Ending up in the middle of nowhere in Red Dead Redemption 2 is easier than you think. Just remember, your horse has free will and will eventually abandon you. Shit, I always pressed the wrong damn button. Kinda like your dad when he said he was going out for cigarettes. For those moments when walking in a straight line for 3 hours seems like your only option, Rockstar gave us a lifeline in the form of a small detail. If you come across someone traveling by wagon, you can politely ask for a ride, no violence required. You'll hop in beside them, beginning an awkward journey in complete silence, filled with weird looks and a tension so thick you could almost cut it with a knife.
So, do you have a carriage or something?
Get off right now.
Got it.
And hurry up.
Okay.
When you arrive in a town where you've previously caused trouble, you'll notice that people you speak to will remember your actions and ask you to behave better this time around.
Any more trouble from you?
You are a good man, Arthur Morgan.
If you get to a shop before opening hours, you can find the clerk doing inventory with a notebook, counting the products to make sure everything is ready for when it's time to start selling.
You'll see when Mike finds his notebook full of dicks.
When shopping in these kinds of stores, you can either buy items through the catalog or physically pick them up off the shelves. When stepping outside from any interior location, the exterior will appear completely white for a few moments. This effect is more noticeable the darker the place you were in and the longer you stayed inside. This happens because your character's eyes adapt to the surrounding light, and when you step out, they need time to adjust to the change in brightness, simulating the real-life process of visual adaptation. Speaking of realistic lighting effects, light will pass through your character's ear ears, making them appear red, just like when light shines through flesh in real life. If you whistle for your horse too many times, you can actually hear Arthur run out of breath, forcing him to stop for a moment to catch it before he can whistle again. Temperature is an incredibly detailed aspect of Red Dead Redemption 2, although paradoxically, many of the game's mechanics barely take advantage of how realistic this system is. The weather varies due to several factors, the most obvious one being your location on the map. You can feel drastic changes between the freezing snowy mountains and the sweltering swamps, but the game goes even further. If you stand too close to a fire and check the temperature, you'll notice how the value shoots up, reaching hundreds of degrees if you're close enough to the flames. Without a doubt, the most fascinating thing about temperature in Red Dead Redemption 2 is how it changes based on altitude. If you use the hot air balloon by less than legal methods, you'll experience something amazing. While the temperature on the ground is relatively normal for the time and place, the higher you ascend, the colder it gets, reaching negative numbers and sometimes registering 20 or 25 degrees lower than on the surface. It's a surprisingly realistic detail, especially considering Red Dead Redemption 2 doesn't even have flight mechanics, so this system doesn't have a direct gameplay purpose. This makes me think Rockstar might have added it as a kind of climate experiment for future projects where reaching high altitudes becomes more common, like for instance GTA 6. Even so, temperature plays a key role in Red Dead Redemption 2, especially when it comes to dressing appropriately. It's not just a visual detail, but a factor that directly influences your character's performance. Traveling through snowy regions or crossing the sweltering swamps requires adapting your clothing to the climate, since the temperature differences between areas can be extreme. Failing to do so can have serious consequences. Wearing the wrong outfit will negatively impact your stamina, health, and even the character's behavior, slowly weakening him. So it's important to remember to add or remove clothing as needed, though be careful since walking around flashing your revolver might not leave the best impression.
I'll give you all the money, just please, stop pointing that at me.
When things get really ugly in one of the towns in Red Dead Redemption 2, you might be lucky enough to have the gang nearby. This is especially likely if you have a mission in a nearby building, as some members of the group often hang around waiting to continue the story. If someone's giving you trouble, the gang won't hesitate to come to your defense. However, their response is often a bit excessive, which will probably create more problems than you had in the first place. So while their intentions might be good, you could easily end up fleeing the city with a wanted level. You can have quite a bit of fun with this machine over here, although to be alone with it, you'll first have to use dialogue with all these people. Dialogue is what I call this shotgun. See how practical it is? In any case, once you're alone, if you shoot the machine, you'll see it start to release a suspicious smoke that knocks you to the ground and keeps you from getting up. Only once the smoke clears will the protagonist be able to stand again, obviously, so you can repeat the process as many times as you want. How many? Doesn't matter, whatever the number, it won't be enough. Very close to that machine are several pipes leaking what appears to be oil. One highly realistic detail is that if you stand beneath these black drips, your character's clothes and face will gradually get stained until he's completely covered in that industrial lubricant. Not exactly the best look. And since we're already a bit filthy, it's the perfect moment to see how that affects your character and the world's reaction. Walking around like a mess doesn't go unnoticed. NPCs will give you weird looks and make unpleasant comments about your appearance. But the best or worst part comes when you return to camp looking like that. Susan won't beat around the bush, she'll give us a proper scolding, and without giving us a choice, she'll force us to clean ourselves up. And no, she won't bathe you like the girls at the hotel. I know what you're thinking of doing with the old lady. The funny part is that once it's all over, Arthur actually gives her a tip as compensation for the trouble, sending a clear message: if you don't keep clean, get ready for a lecture and to lose a few bucks.
You're taking a bath right now, Mr. Morgan.
All right, Mrs. Grimshaw.
Now hold on. Leave the revolver outside, Mr. Morgan.
That ain't the revolver, Mrs. Grimshaw.
You can get a little too curious around camp, and that can lead to some pretty awkward consequences. The most surprising part of this detail is that every character reacts differently when they feel like the protagonist is stalking or bothering them. In the case of the women, for example, there are several possible reactions. If you choose to follow Karen and don't take your eyes off her, she'll soon start to feel uncomfortable. Her expressions and glances will give it away until she finally confronts you and asks why you're doing that.
Why are you doing this? I'm very good at ignoring people.
Then she'll say she's gonna start ignoring you from now on with a resigned attitude, like she doesn't quite have the nerve to tell you to fuck off. If you keep up the creepy behavior, her discomfort will grow to the point that she starts covering herself up so you'll stop staring. At this point, things are definitely getting weird. Other women in camp react very differently. Doing the same thing to Sadie Adler is downright scary.
Just what is your problem?
Her comments and looks are far more aggressive, but interestingly, she doesn't try to cover up because the game understands that Sadie lady already dresses modestly. Her reaction isn't about what she's wearing, it's about your invasive behavior. On the other hand, if you try this with Dutch, you'll see a different example. His reaction is limited to anger. He clearly gets annoyed, but not to the same level of physical discomfort as others. Still, I wouldn't push it too far trying to spy on Dutch's plans. In any case, it's wise to be careful about acting smart around camp, because even something that seems harmless, like staring too much, can end with the protagonist being kicked out and losing honor unnecessarily.
Hey, Karen, don't you think I'm a bit dirty? It didn't work.
Arthur will need to eat and sleep regularly throughout the story. Failing to do so can lead to the character appearing tired, sore, and beginning to lose weight, which will obviously affect his stats. One of the most polished aspects of Red Dead Redemption 2 is the NPC damage system, an area where previous Rockstar games often fell short. In earlier titles, characters had a complicated relationship with death. Some could take absurd amounts of damage, while others dropped from something as minor as a shot to the hand or foot. This time around, Rockstar took realism a step further. For instance, at the end of a fist fight, it's common for your opponent to still be alive. And while at first glance it might seem like he's dead, he's actually in a state never before seen in Rockstar's games. Unconsciousness. You can confirm this by aiming a weapon at him. The reticle will still turn red, indicating the character is still breathing. Only when you shoot again and the red damage marker appears will you know for sure that now he's dead. It's a subtle detail, but one that adds impressive depth to the combat system. Not even death can spare you from being used for science. Just look at how those pigs feast on the test subject's corpse. Nothing better than feeding these charming animals with the remains from point 20. One of the details that surprised me the most when I first played Red Dead Redemption 2 was the real-time change of objects during animations. It's something you only notice if you're really paying close attention, which is why it often goes unnoticed by many players. This detail is based on how objects are perfectly synchronized with character animations, changing their state according to what's happening on screen. A clear example is when you see an NPC eating at a tavern. The plate doesn't stay static, instead the food gradually disappears as the animation progresses. But it goes much further than that. You can also see it in the way planks are sawed during construction work, in the butcher shop when meat is being chopped, or even during tree cutting. All of these elements respond logically to their environment and to the actions taking place, elevating the game's realism to a whole new level. The most surprising thing about the previous detail is that these changes in objects don't rely exclusively on pre-programmed animations. In other words, the game isn't limited to triggering an effect only when an NPC finishes their animation. Rather, the environment reacts dynamically even if we intervene ahead of time. A perfect example of this can be seen in the woodcutting scene. Normally, the lumberjack performs his chopping animation, and just at that moment the log splits in two. But if we decide to step in early and throw our own axe at the log before the NPC does, the result is exactly the same. The log still splits, even though it wasn't triggered by the NPC's animation. This proves that Red Dead Redemption 2 doesn't rely solely on scripted events. Instead, its world reacts more freely and logically to actions within the environment, opening the door to countless possibilities that break away from linear and predictable gameplay.
Are you going to finish that?
People in Rhodes are so selfish. And to wrap up this incredible set of details divided into 3 points, we have the crown jewel, construction sites. When Rockstar decided to include this level of realism, they didn't settle for something purely decorative. They gave it a leading role within the game world, and the result is truly impressive. If you walk near a construction site and stop to observe like a retiree with time to spare, you'll notice that the workers are actually building the structure. Every plank, every nail, every hammer strike happens in real time, and the building gradually takes shape as the days go by. What's most fascinating is that if you return to the same spot years later, you'll find that the construction is now complete and fully functioning, seamlessly integrated into the life of the town. This kind of dynamic evolution creates the feeling of a living, ever-changing world, something Rockstar had never achieved at this level before. And honestly, it's even more satisfying to tear everything to pieces after having witnessed the years it took to build that piece of crap. If you hold down the trigger button while firing certain weapons, your character will leave the chamber open, allowing you to physically see the ammo inside, which honestly serves absolutely no real purpose. Shooting boats in Red Dead Redemption 2 will actually sink them. Little by little, water begins to seep into the hull, making the vessel gradually submerge until it disappears into the sea. And if you decide to pull this little prank on someone while they're sailing, be ready for the consequences. Because when that poor soul finally swims back to shore, they probably won't be laughing. I know there's less humor left in this world every day. If you need need to sleep but can't afford a hotel room, and the idea of spending the night outdoors with bugs crawling all over you doesn't appeal, there is an alternative, although it's not exactly legal. You can sneak into the hotel by breaking a window quietly. If you're stealthy and no one catches you, you'll be able to use the bed and rummage through the furniture just like you paid for the room. That said, forget about using the front door, you don't have the keys. You'll always need to enter and exit through the window. That's the downside of being a squatter. But be careful, if someone spots you breaking in, they'll become a witness, alert the authorities, and the hotel will get shut down. So make sure no one's watching before you try anything, and seriously, don't smash the glass like you're probably thinking of doing. The level of detail in Red Dead Redemption 2 is so meticulous that even things we don't normally see have been carefully designed. A perfect example of this is the horseshoes. To notice it, you'll need to activate photo mode and freeze time. If you zoom in on the leg of a tamed horse, you'll see that it's wearing its horseshoe, perfectly fitted. But if you do the same with a wild horse, you'll notice it doesn't have one, because it's never been handled by a human. It's a completely unnecessary detail from a gameplay perspective, since it's not visible during normal play, but it's there and I really hope you appreciate it. Just think, someone at Rockstar probably missed their kid's birthday just to implement this feature, and only 3 people out of the millions who bought the game ever noticed it. The wagon wheels in Red Dead Redemption 2 have an impressive destruction system. You can blow them up with dynamite, but you can also gradually shoot them apart, splintering them, tearing off pieces, and deforming their shape until they eventually break off completely. That said, the horses pulling the wagon won't be fans of your little experiment, so get ready to chase them down if you want to see the whole thing in action. Running away isn't always the best option. When we come across a bear, it's pretty common to panic and try to run for our lives. However, we have to remember that this game is more realistic than actual reality, and that's exactly why the last thing you should do when a massive bear is charging at you is run. Apparently, someone decided that if you show these beasts you truly don't care that they're about to eat you, they simply won't do it. This strange bit of programming that bears seem to follow in real life is carried over into the game, and if you test it, you'll discover that you just saved your life by doing what you do best, absolutely nothing. That said, once the bear walks away, it might be a good time to go change your clothes because things aren't exactly smelling great after that. However, there are some people who are not worthy of that kind of respect from wild beasts. People who don't get second chances from the law. People whose honor is so low they'd unlock a secret ending just for them. I'm talking of course about those of you who aren't subscribed. So in honor of the bears, in honor of Karen, the Plan, Arthur Morgan, and the Vendor Linda gang, follow me for more content.